First off, Professor Antobam-Ntekudzi and myself, Professor Nelson Santana, we want to thank you for being here. We're actually very happy and proud of this exhibit that we've been working on, Transnational Dominican Activism, documenting grassroots social movements, through the work that several artists, photographers, activists, videographers have been doing over the year through the multi-platform S&Dome. But before going there, we just want to thank a few people. We received $10,000 from the American Rescue Plan grant. It was funded through the National Endowment for the Humanities in collaboration with the American Library Association. So thanks to that, this was made possible. Thank you to Dean Luis Montenegro, Professor Michael Miller for being here to address the crowd, and for our wonderful colleagues here at BCC for, it's been an amazing place. At the moment, we're actually hiring, so if there's anyone out there who watches the video, this is a great place to be in, to work in. It's just, the support that we receive here is just amazing. And of course, this event is for our students. And I also want to thank the colleagues, Emmanuel Espinal, Carrero, Lorena Espinosa Peña, and other collaborators who over the years have done amazing work to make S&Dome possible, which was founded in 2009 and is still going. And I will leave you with Professor Antobam-Ntekudzi.
I'll be very brief. I just wanted to give a big thank you to the S&Dome team for showing us this side of Dominican culture, and thank you for providing us with this gift of witnessing the activism that you do through journalism. And all of this you do, unpaid, and it is your passion. And so we are really, really excited to be able to be the venue and kind of the vessel to exhibit this phenomenal work that this event is kicking off.
Thank you so much. And at this time, we would like to ask Dean Montenegro to say a few words.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Well, good afternoon, everyone now. Thank you for inviting me to just give a few words to this event. I think it's important for us to document what is currently happening and provide a context to our students. Ultimately, we're an educational institution, but also one of the highest aims of the college is to develop engaged citizenship, citizen students, citizens that once they graduate. And what better event than this to show to our students where they are in the context of their culture, the city, and really the world. It's a personal note. My wife is Dominican. I've been visiting the Dominican Republic for about 28 years. And one thing I know is true, or two things. The two major passions of Dominicans are baseball and politics. Every time I visit my mother-in-law at her house, she always has the radio on. And from morning till night, the radio is always on about what's happening in the country, what are the politicians doing, what are the public institutions doing or not doing or failing to do. And I think that passion carries over here as well. One of the, I would say, phases of a people that move to other countries or immigrate to other countries is how soon or how well they can engage in the political discourse of that country. And clearly that's been the case for the diaspora, Dominican diaspora in the United States, particularly in New York City. We know that we have a lot of Dominican individuals involved in politics in the United States and in the city. And I recognize that that also, I think, has a connection with the politics that I hear about in the Dominican Republic. Because To some degree, a lot of Dominicans see the United States as a model. Despite its challenges, its the imperfect way that its democracy is, and they experience that democracy, they see it as a model, like other countries in the world. And having that diaspora connection, I don't call it a diaspora, it's almost like a carousel. It's always a lot of flights go to DR early in the summer of children of Dominicans going back to the DR. And the same thing happens the other direction early or late in the summer, before school starts. So I know that Dominicans here feel the pull of their home country very strongly. Those that are over there feel the pull of their loved ones over here. And that personal connection translates also to a political engagement, both here and there. And so I think this theme that you're describing today is perfectly encapsulates what's happening for the Dominican diaspora. That the observations, the experiences that occurs in one country inform what occurs in the other country. And so I think this is a great example, a great, I think, way to showcase that for Dominican students that are here, either born here or children of Dominican parentage, to give them a context of where they are in the world and where they fit in that world, and how they can then become engaged citizens in both countries. So, thank you. Great work.
Thanks so much.
Montenegro. We will now have a few words from Chief Librarian, Professor Michael Miller.
Welcome everyone, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about the exhibit opening for Transnational Dominican Activism. It looks like a wonderful effort. I am the professor and chief librarian here at BCC, and I just want to really give congratulations to the documentarians, as well as the exhibit collaborators and our esteemed guests today, talking about the work that went into this exhibit. It's a really handsome and informative exhibit. Note also that the effort that went into the grant seeking to support this exhibit is a laudable accomplishment. Getting money from the National Endowment from the Humanities and the American Library Association is a great accomplishment, so that should be noted. Both the oral history website, and then some, as well as this exhibit, are testaments of pride in heritage and activism for societal betterment. Congratulations on capturing history as it unfurls. TDA exhibit is a great representation of broader solidarity in social justice. This exhibit and the SNDUM website are great learning tools for exploring the intersection where social justice and resistance try to correct corruption and oppression. So when you view the website, when you take in this exhibit, do it with gusto, use it well, learn from it, and emulate it. Thanks for all your efforts, and have a great opening today.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Miller, for your kind words and for continued encouragement. And so what we have next for you is the website reveal. Nelson, would you like to join me in revealing the website work?
Thank you so much, yes. So this exhibit has two components, right? There is there are the physical panels, and we have a few of them here. We have two panels, and then the introductory panel, which is right behind Mr. Carrero, who's one of the artists here, photographers, videographers. And those are downstairs on the second floor of the library. Technically the first floor of the library, right? But it's the second floor of the building. And we also have this online component, which is the website. Now, for those unaware, Essendom stands for Esencia Dominicana. If you translate it, it means Dominican essence. And this is a project that started again by two college students at CUNY Baruch College, right? And we just wanted to create this website. And this is the product of it. It was founded in 2009. And then we've been working with amazing people like Mr. Carrero, Mauri Rodriguez, Lorena Espinosa, Peña. And what we decided to do for this exhibit was basically showcase the activism portion that we have been documenting within the Dominican community. And we're focusing on the cities of New York, Santo Domingo, and Santiago. And of course, you can learn all about it here. Right? We have movements that will speak to everyone, things that matters that have taken place that people are aware of. Here you'll see images of the panel, of the different panels, right? And when you click on any panel, it'll actually take you to the photo gallery from there. So this is, for example, the Marcha del Millón, right? And so we try to use images from the Dominican Republic and New York, etc. There is more that will be added to the website. We will not share what that is yet, but we hope to unveil it in February of 2023 during a virtual event. However, you'll notice that there's a summary from each event, and it'll also link you. It'll give you the name of the person who took the images, right? And it'll take you to the original gallery. So it will also link you back to Essendom. Right. And you can read the articles, which are in Spanish and English, etc. But of course, we are here, and we're going to go back here. We have one of our presenters. He's actually via Zoom.
Mr. Espinal, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So this is the portion of the event that will allow viewers, those of you who are here and those of us who will join us through this recording, it'll allow viewers to get to know the members of Essendom and their work, as well as goals, challenges, wishes that they have for the organization, and then also their goals for this exhibition. And so on that panel is Professor Nelson Santana, who is now working the camera, Mr. Emmanuel Espinal, who's also project co-curator, who did so much work, and we're so grateful for you. Mr. John Carrero, thank you so much for your liveliness, and can't wait to hear the stories. And then myself, I am the moderator. So let's get started. Now, I'm going to throw out a question. How did Essendom get started?
Would you like to take it over?
I can take a stab at that first. Yes, my name is Emmanuel Espinal, editor-in-chief of Essendom, which we started in 2009, as Nelson said. First, I want to say thank you for having me, even if it's remotely. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. My head is on a swivel from time to time due to a bit of an ear infection, but thank you that graciously Emma, Nelson, and John have put work to put me there, even if it's virtually. So thank you for that very much. In terms of the question, Essendom really got started, as Nelson stated. It was just an idea that he and I kind of developed way before we even met. We both wanted or had an idea of being able to produce a Dominican and Dominican American-led magazine that would kind of give a bit of everything that we thought was missing within our childhood growing up in New York City, but of Dominican descent, and we could not really find it anywhere. All the history that we had to go find and dig was really on a personal note. And so we decided, we had a casual conversation, and that came across early on in when we met, and we knew that wasn't available, but we kind of said, why don't we kind of take it on and try and see if we could develop such a magazine. And through a lot of brainstorming, a lot of research, we tried to actually do that in a physical sense, but figured that it was a bit too costly, so we decided to do the next best thing, which was a digital version that was more accessible for us to be able to make it. And it would also help to see if there was a public for it, a niche. And luckily we started very, I would say, crude, because we both had zero experience in getting that done. But along the way, we were able to kind of jump some hurdles and meet other people that were as passionate as us, John being one of them who's there, Monty, which he also mentioned. And little by little, we kind of found a little bit of momentum, and were able to get to the point that we are now.
That's a pretty good summary.
Me, I came into the picture was it was a coincidence. I was also running my own website. I'm Puerto Rican. I'm the honorary Dominican. I've been to the Dominican Republic plenty of times. I've studied at. I took courses at La UAS, which is the University of the Dominican Republic out there. I don't know how to translate it in English, like the Autonomous University of the Dominican Republic. So it's funny because I'm older than him. I have him by maybe 15 years. And you guys just triggered something off that I forgot. That when I did something similar to them, but when I was in college, there wasn't the internet. So I actually did a magazine. It was called Raíces, which means roots in English. And we published and everything, and we were in college. It's kind of funny, the connection that you guys, but we didn't have the internet. So getting back to how I got involved with Nelson and Emmanuel, I had a website called salsamerengue.com, which covered Dominican and Puerto Rican. Because, you can't have salsa without the merengue. You can't merengue without the salsa. We're family. We're just next door. So I was covering events. And it was like them, on the fly. We learned on the fly. I was IT, but I was more like, oh, you got a problem with your printer, you got a problem with networking, stuff like that, software. I wasn't a videographer doing websites. So when I did my website, he was one of the followers, one of the first followers of the website. He didn't start as a dom yet, so it was so I remember how we met. He emailed us, and he told us about an event in Baruch that he was having. And we ended up going to Baruch, covering the event, and not knowing that in the future he was going to be working at City College. So when he worked at City College, I worked at City College. That was the connection. And so this is the reason why I worked with him, because there was a lot of websites that wanted me to work with them, because we were doing video, we were doing photography, we're editing, putting it online, and we were doing things like them. As soon as we got it, 2, 3 hours, 4 hours later, it was there. People couldn't believe it. The only reason that I worked with Nelson and Emmanuel was because of their professionalism. They wanted to come out with a product that was good, that people from all sorts of life could read, and it was very well written, very well documented. It wasn't, when we both got into the internet, we were like, it was like the beginning of the internet for Spanish people, because other Spanish websites were horrible. They were lousy. All they did was show pictures and nothing, no documentation. Some of it was it was something that I have to, at the time, my children are adults, but they were kids, and I wanted my children to go to a website that they were able to learn and appreciate. And I felt comfortable with his website because it was like mine. I wanted my kids to be able to go to my website, and if they saw people dancing, I was showing them people dancing at, you know, the best side. I wasn't like looking for something, oh, look, Bill Carrero, let me put it on the web. It would be funny for people to laugh. You know, my thing was I wanted to show the positivity in our culture, and that's what led us to work together, because that's what they are. That's what they stand for. And we did a bunch of stuff together. The only thing we didn't do was go to the Dominican Republic, which I would love to do with you guys and go down there, which eventually when I retire, I'll be here there as a Puerto Rican correspondent covering Dominican events in Puerto Rico, because that would be cool. There's a lot of Dominicans in PR. But that's what it was. I really wanted a product that really represented hardworking, decent people, not stereotypes. And because of that, and because I was doing music like them, I was able to I even covered KRS-One. You know, I met KRS-One. I was like, they're like, yo, come in, because I was doing so many Spanish events. They were like, we ended up doing rock and stuff like that. So I was like, and what was good about it is that KRS-One is a really great rapper, decent, always positive, and just like them. And that was what led us. And we collaborate a lot. We keep in contact all the time. And, you know,
No, and it's hilarious because we did a lot of music, culture, etc. But we would like just see each other at events, like when we met Calle 13.
Yeah.
Special release thing.
Yeah.
You need like to win tickets together. And look, I found this guy's here. He's covering it, and you know, and it's hilarious, you know. But yeah, John has always been committed. So this exhibit focuses on the activism that we've covered. So there's so much. So the goal, thank you for that question. The goal is to actually create more exhibits with different aspects from S&M.
I love the way all three of you discussed how organically you met, and I think that's part of the success of your organization, and then as well as the work that you do and you go out there and do it every day when you're covering topics that are most important, whether it's social, whether it's political. So I think that adds to that success.
And what was very interesting about all of it was because we all have full-time jobs. And we didn't leave our full-time jobs. We still kept our full-time jobs while we were doing this. And we would go, like, Larry Gold, I don't know if he's still there, he's the owner of SOB, Sounds of Brazil. And we would go there, and after a while they were like, oh, you can come here every Friday and Saturday to record. You know, at first we were like, oh, can you let us record? You know, then, oh, dope. After a while, when they saw our product, it was like all of a sudden people were getting in contact with us from everywhere. And he knows it, because they would go to the website, and I know that must have happened plenty of time with S&M, that people, like, they thought we had like a team of 20 people because of all the work that we were doing, that we would work full time, do this on our free time. We invested our own money, we buy our own equipment because of the passion, because I feel that we need to, I look at my kids and I tell them, I say, you're very, very, very fortunate, because I wish I would have been able to record my friends, you know, when I was in high school, you know, in college, you know, and we're at an age now that when one day when I'm no longer here, my kids are going to have videos of me. Hey, look at that acting silly. Look at that doing this. And people are laughing like, yeah, man. And it's like, because of the technology, we need to really, people of color really need to harness this technology and use it to represent them, because we are not being represented correctly. If we don't take advantage, the tools are there now. Maybe 15 years ago, when we were doing this, when we started, it was very expensive. I mean, I still have my original Sony camera that right now you could probably get that camera, which is not considered low end, for like $150, and I put $1,200 on my own pocket to buy it, and it was a hit. But I got countless videos, and the same thing with them. They invested their money, their time, when they could have been hanging out, going to a club. We weren't clubs, but we were recording people. We were interviewing people. I mean, we did the Dominican Film Festival. You know, there's a couple of Dominican artists I look now on TV, on Netflix. Good example, he's a model. He modeled with my son. That's how I met him. And he came out with a movie on Netflix, and it's Vampire in the Bronx.
I saw that movie.
that young child,
Yeah.
he's Dominican.
Yeah.
And he used to model with my son when they were little. When they were like 2, 3 years old, they were modeling. So we covered that young man. And we would see him, and it was very interesting because we were like so focused on the positivity that, there's a lot of haters. There's always a hater when you're trying to do something good. And I remember that young man would show up with his mother to every event that had to do with Dominicans. He would show up, and I would see the older Dominican artists, the actors like, oh yeah, you think you're gonna, like making fun of him, like, oh, you're coming on the set like you're gonna make it big. And now the kid is on a movie on Netflix. And he's 18. He's the same age as my son. So so to me, seeing that, and the kid is very positive. And to see that is very encouraging. And to me, I strongly suggest these children is like, oh, you want to take a video, take a picture? Oh, why don't you take a picture and edit it? Make something funny. It might be funny, it might be silly, but they're getting skills that are so hard to get. That, that right now, we need to harness that. And that's what they were doing at Sandom, by going to these events, covering politicians. The one that I'm in, when you see my photo, I was with, it had to do with Dominican and Haitian relations. That there was a lot of stuff going on in DR, and over here, the Dominicans went to protest the treatment of Haitians. And we were part of that group that we marched from Inwood, right? All the way to past 42nd Street. And we were getting people on the way, and I'm there walking, I'm like maybe 30 pounds heavier. I got my stomach and I got my camera. When the advantage when I was doing it and I had a bigger belly, so I put my camera here, and I would go to events and my camera was right here. This was my tripod. It was like this. And I would go like this and record people, and you see in the pictures. And I said, oh, I saw myself with the camera right here, and he got me a side view. And to me, but these two young men, because I'm about to retire, these two young men have done and are still doing. It transcends Dominican. It's something that it's part of the New York melting pot. Because even though they might be Dominicans, they're immigrants, but they're Americans, and they're covering what you see in PBS, the American experience. But it just happens to be Dominican.
Well, Jonathan's already talked to us about what inspires him. And so I'd like to know from Nelson and Emmanuel, what inspires you about the activism that you do?
Well, on a personal note, John kind of touched upon a lot of the things. Hearing what he said, the last portion that he was talking about, is definitely part of what has always been, what has driven me in particular in the project. And that is a kid of Dominican descent who was born here in the States, and to be able to see that the passions that we have in being able to document, preserve, and exhibit our culture, that's usually been what has been the motivating influence. And to be able to just document it and show it across, and that someone who is on the other side, like John, who was doing it on his own platform, and to see that he actually sees our work as something special is part of the driving force for me on a particular level. The other thing is I don't see it more as activism. I see it more as being able to give light to a lot of the things from the migrant experience, because my parents were both migrants, and they were the ones who were able to show the path in one way or another, even though they were pretty blind in the way they were working as immigrants often are. And to be able to just show the culture in a different way, because a lot of the stuff, like John was saying, we're not shown in the right light. We're usually either made fun of in some way or another because of either language or the way we assimilate isn't necessarily 100% because of a lot of different factors, cultural, language, education, a lot of those factors that make assimilation a little bit awkward. And to be able to show that has really been what it is for me. I don't necessarily see it as activism or as being able to give a fair share, a fair light, and be able to kind of show it to people in a different way so that they can themselves be informed, because a lot of that also has to do with the other side, how much information they do have from a cultural aspect and everything else. So to me, it's more about that, to be able to show that light, especially being on both sides of the fence, because my particular view on it is from both sides. For one group, I'm not Dominican enough because I was born in the States, and to the other side, I'm not American enough because I am too Dominican to be in that realm. So it's me being able to show the two worlds in one melting pot and trying to be able to give light to both sides, because it's really about that more than anything.
Well, for me personally, I'm kind of selfish, right? So I'm trying to understand myself. That's one of the reasons why I love the work I do in Antobam, the communities where we live, etc. And we kind of happened, at least the activism part, I would say, kind of by accident. We started in 2009, and then, like John said, and Emmanuel said, we have this power, this ability to capture things, to document. I'm a trained archivist, trained librarian, right? Ever since I was little, I watched my parents. They would have all these photos. And it's just amazing trying to look at your grandparents, what they look like, your parents when they were young, right? I mean, it's like, it brings chills to me. And then in 2009, we brought in a collaborator named Mauli Rodriguez. And he just started, Mauli, if you see this, we love you. I love you very much, don't take this the wrong way. He's very, he's an activist, right? He's very social. He's always there, in your face. And he kind of brought this to us, and he started writing all these articles, and sometimes Manuel and I would be like, what is this? We would question it. But it was interesting. He was bringing attention to corruption and certain things that perhaps were not very common at the time, but then years later, we came to find out that this was true. And so we just started documenting different things like La Marcha Verde, the Green March, not to be confused with the Green Tide from the 60s or the 80s. And so basically, it's grassroots activists asking to make politicians held accountable. If you read about Odebrecht in Brazil and just different parts of Latin America and different parts of Africa as well, just government corruption there and people being under payroll and just a lot of money laundering, etc. So we just covering injustices, right? Just different events like Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, right? In Washington Heights, in Harlem, the Marcha Verde in Santiago, in Santo Domingo, and then also in New York, which we did. And yes, so it's kind of, excuse me, I'm not crying, I'm not getting emotional, I just had to cough. I don't have COVID, just to so fingers crossed. And yeah, we just, we love the work that we do. Hopefully we answered the question.
Yeah, between the three of you, you've answered like 4 questions already. So we're going to pivot to the exhibit. And so the exhibition online as well as the physical one, the panels, covers several major demonstrations. Are there any that are most memorable to each of you? What is it about those movements that made them ideal for this exhibition?
Well, you gave your experience in one already.
Yeah, we always, it was like we would see each other at work and talk and stuff like that. Say, what event you're covering? What event you're covering? What are you doing? Okay, come on, help me out. Can you help me out? And we went to Baruch before that march. that students were organized. No, it wasn't Baruch. That this guy Hamilton. Why was he?
Oh, Ryan, at the graduate center.
At the graduate center, we went because Dominicans and Haitians were concerned about what's going on, and we went there, and we offered our services. We're like, I was like, I hope I design a website. I was hosting at the time. So I said, I'm hosting from home. I could create a website and just link it, whatever. And they didn't take us up. It was more like talk, So you mentioned that there were going to be a demonstration, that they were going to have something, and can I come and record? And that's how we ended up doing that event. What I'm most memorable about it was like how it kept growing as we walked. It was just a few of us, more people started coming. And how people were so passionate about, that the relationships between Haitians and Dominicans. Sunni, the guy who became the Prime Minister of Britain.
Yes.
How there's this backlash now. Like, he's Hindu, he's Indian, right? And, and I'm like, and I told my friend this morning, because he sent me a video. I said, the only way I see people working together is because of climate change. Because it's going to force everybody to realize what's their worth. What we need to do as a people. And then you're going to throw away, he's white, he's black, he's Haitian, he's Dominican, because it's about survival. And getting back to the march, what was fascinating was like that I was able to walk 40 blocks and then pass out. It was a lot. I was amazed. Hey, come on in.
It was over 100 blocks actually.
Yeah, and it was like nobody was stopped. We were stopped like to get a water, but people were passionate walking all the way down. Until we got there, we got in front of the Dominican consulate, and people were like, we're like,
For some context, the event, so in the Dominican Republic, I forget if it was 2010, 2013, I forget the year, but basically, there was so we talk about this in the exhibit, the Dominican Republic, like most nations throughout Latin America, right, in the United States you have one constitution, it's never been changed, but you have amendments. Yeah. To correct any errors or revisions that come up, right? Quote unquote. I'm just saying, this is the law library here, so, I'm just putting what's out there. But basically, the Dominican Republic, Leonel Fernandez came, he changed the constitution, and the idea was to basically take the nationality away from people born in the Dominican Republic of Haitian descent. So there were people who all of a sudden were Dominican, and then from one day to the next, they were not given papers. Now, I don't know about folks here, maybe some folks here were alive in the 50s, 60s, I don't know the date anymore, but getting documents, well, we saw it during the last election. There were people who had, here in the United States, legislation was changed, preventing people from getting documentation. So similar to the Dominican Republic, preventing people from getting documents. And if you don't have documentation, you do not get certain things. So this prevents you from going to school, from even going to the hospital at times. You know how sad it is for someone to have to give birth in the streets because the hospital doesn't want you? But anyways, so we were protesting that, stripping people of their nationality. Excuse me. And so that's what that event was about, and it was memorable. I mean, just joining the cause. During Black Lives Matter, we've also covered, in Brooklyn, I believe, crossing from Manhattan to Brooklyn or Brooklyn to Manhattan, I forget. But there are just so many different mobilization efforts that take place, and I think it's important for us to document this and spread the information, right? Because with traditional media, everyone has their own agenda and they present information a certain way. And so we believe that since we're independent, again, John mentioned, we don't get paid for this. We do it, out of our, because we want to do it. We use our funds to purchase the equipment, etc. To tell a more fuller story, or at least a story from our perspective. Everyone has a right to tell their story. And we just want to document people and tell their side of the story. And so this particular march was started by Anthony Stevens Acevedo, who worked at the Cuban Dominican Studies Institute. Interesting guy. He was born in Queens, New York. His mother was Dominican, and his father, Hope Stevens, a very renowned black activist. I forget where he was born, if it was in Tortola or St. Netherlands and St. Kitts, I believe. But anyways, he came up with this idea of this march, and yeah, I mean, the idea was to walk there and hand deliver a letter to the Dominican Consulate General. The Dominican Consulate General is obviously someone who's installed there and represents the Dominican Republic. So that was the goal of it. But yes, that was for you, your most memorable. For me, it's difficult to pick my most memorable march. Each one is just unique. Hansi, who passed away and participated in that, do you recall when we walked by a certain block and we had all types of people? There was someone who wanted to hit one of our protesters.
Oh, yeah.
Because he kept screaming. He passed away this year or last year. He passed away, unfortunately. And so we got, there's all types of hate and just
there was Dominicans that were pissed off at us.
And for me, memorable.
I forgot about that, right?
In the Dominican Republic, I remember when we did Marcha del Cibao, and there were people who kind of were afraid of me recording, and at one point I thought they were going to attack me, but they thought that for some reason I was infiltrating.
Or you're an agent of the government.
Oh, that was an agent, because I was an agent of the government.
Enemy of the state.
And it was just a surreal moment, but everything turned out okay. But it's just interesting.
It could get a little, when you're recording and people don't know who you are, they do get nervous. Yeah. They think that you're going there to record and try to use it against them or whatever. But overall, it was a great experience. It was a great experience.
No, it has been, and we've also, in some of the images, we do have people who support the cause or against the cause. It's very, very minimal, and that's one of the things that we want to showcase, right? Like, there are people who are, for example, are scared that the island will be fused together, right? That there will be this fusion of the island. So you have these people who support Marcha Verde, but they're also very anti-Haitian, for example. You have people that are pro-feminism, people who are anti-abortion. So you have all these mixture of people.
All these ideologies.
Ideologies, and I think that's important. Now, obviously, you don't want to go against. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah.
Can I ask you something? You're Dominican, right? I'm Dominican myself, and I was born and raised in the North. And some of the things you say is so true, but the root of that is lack of education. In our society, they don't teach all of that. And religious plays a lot. When it comes to women's rights, I was born Catholic, Christian, whatever. And until I came to the United States, I didn't know my rights as a woman. I didn't know that I have a choice. That once you get pregnant, you have to give birth because there's no other choice. But a lot of the problem in the United is lack of education. And that problem that we have with people of color, which we are also, it's because of that also. Because they teach so much about colorism. The white is superior. That if you light the skin, you are better than the other.
But this is what it is. With the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Barbados, Haiti, Trinidad, Latin America, compared to, let's say, like China, India, the Middle East. They have a continuous culture that's 2,000-3,000 years old. That they don't have all these different ideologies coming in. Us, we're a conglomeration of different nations. We're from all over. So there's two ways of looking at it. You can look at it like they're ignorant, which is part of it. I'm not disagreeing with you. But you should also look at it as your culture is evolving. It's an evolution of philosophies. Because you're trying to create your own identity because you have all these different nationalities. So you have the Spaniard, the African, the indigenous, so it's like, it's in you, but you don't, it's starting to come out, but it's coming out gradually, the mixture. I met an individual who's Puerto Rican, who's a Hasidite. He's a Hasid. The curls and the whole thing. And I was 18 years old. And I was an assistant teacher. He was a teacher at the school. and he's Puerto Rican, lives in PR, has land and everything. He goes to me, he liked me a lot. He's like, oh, John, you're real smart. You want to convert me. You would have seen me. If I would have followed him, I would have had this happened with curls hanging out. And a long beard. He goes, oh, John, I was born in Puerto Rico. My family lived in Puerto Rico for generations, right? He said he did a genealogical study of his family because they were very, very Catholic. And something happened with the Catholic Church, with the radio station that spoke against his family. So he said, I got to know about my people. So he traced his family that's from Puerto Rico, which is African and indigenous. And then he traced the other part of his family all the way to Spain. When he got to Spain, he realized, oh, we're Jewish. And they forced us to convert to Catholicism. That was Jewish, that was handed down for generations, but they just did it. He just did it. He didn't know that it was Jewish. So the point that I'm trying to make is that we're mixed. We're so mixed. And we have all these influences, in language, in food, in custom, that we can't even... I could do something that Nelson will pick up, and it's like a gesture, and it could be a gesture that's from the Middle East. But it was handed down from generation to generation with the families. So to me, what I see that's going on in the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Puerto Rico, and all that, is that we are now, because we have the means, the education, and the technology. Because the technologies, you have choices now. You can read this, you can read that. When before you just had to read whatever the government or the millionaire who owned the publishing company. So now, because of that, we're evolving. It's just that we got to realize that we're evolving, and that sometimes we're going to have conflicts, like you said, with religion, abortion, feminism, machismo, rich, poor, and that's the way I'm looking at the world now. That since we're not from the other side of the world, and they have a continuous culture that. And what really woke me up was when I was in college, one of my friends of mine, which was crazy, convinced me to take Chinese. So I'm sitting in a class trying to learn Chinese, Puerto Rican, and I'm like, ni hao ma, whatever, Then the Chinese professor, the Chinese professor comes up to me, and it hit me like a brick. He says, "Where you from?" Yeah, New York. And I said, "No, where you from?" No, I said, "Oh. No, my parents are from Puerto Rico." She says, "No, where you from?" Like, in other words, you don't know where you're from, but where are you really from? And that really that was like, it was a rude awakening, but it was the awakening that I needed. And I think that's what Dominicans, people from the Caribbean have to ask themselves. It's like, okay, I'm here now, but where was I before I was here? And, and that's when you start opening up and start accepting other groups, other cultures, and yourself.
Thank you. Just to piggyback back on what you were saying, so the concept of Leonel Fernandez and other provisions, aside from denationalizing people, stripping people of their citizenship, it also brought in provisions from the Roman Catholic Church, right? So abortion became illegal in the Constitution from that moment forward, right? Some folks want to do that here.
But there you could go to jail. Woman go to jail.
Right, but the interesting thing is, if you have money, women can get an abortion, right? So it's like, who is it really affecting, right? You're again, because El Cardenal Lopez Rodriguez for many years has been very influential. So the Roman Catholic Church, even Trujillo was in bed with the Roman Catholic Church when Trujillo was in power. So thank you so much for your perspective.
I want to make sure Emmanuel has a chance to answer that question too. Emmanuel, are there any very memorable demonstrations that you remember? And then also, while you were selecting the movements to showcase in the exhibit, what made these ideal to show?
Well, in choosing one that would be memorable, it would be difficult, just because the ones that I was part of personally and physically, they definitely are memorable because it's all in the moment and all that you see within and the passions that each and every one of them rile up in different factions. But then also being able to see something like the Marcha Verde Santo Domingo, which amassed a huge crowd that normally you won't see in a lot of the Dominican manifestations, because I was used to seeing a lot of smaller demonstrations, people burning tires, blocking roads, that I'm used to seeing, but I never ever saw the kind of sea of little heads in the image that we have in the intro panel. That image was very interesting to me and was one that really caught my eye. And then obviously things that stemmed from that have passed on that we weren't able to cover, like La Plaza de la Bandera, which was another instance where there was a big manifestation of people. So in choosing one, it's kind of difficult, but the one that stood out to me the most was that one, just because of the sheer magnitude of people that it moved, which I had not seen from the Dominican Republic angle. And in choosing the ones that we chose, they had to do a lot with the theme. It was something that was continuous, so it was something that we started with one, but obviously every other edition kind of manifested in a different way. So like Marcha Verde was very, very easy to pick for the actual exhibit because it had multiple facets, and on top of that, it was one of the marches that stemmed from a lot of different social needs, and that's why we chose that. And then the others kind of were really special in their own way. The Marcha de las Mariposas, which is against it's the nonviolence against women. That was very interesting, and to see that type of event happening over there. And the choosing was based on a lot of different things that the group thought should be more visible within the scope of our culture and what the manifestations themselves show.
Thank you for taking us through that thought process and the image for the main panel, which is what we also used for the flyer, the broadcast flyer. It's definitely very powerful, definitely very powerful, so thank you. Now, we don't want to hold the food hostage, and so I'm going to ask my final question. There will be more of this kind of dialogue coming up in another portion of this larger project. It'll be kind of like an oral history where we get to speak more in depth with these three gentlemen, as well as other members of Esendom who helped to make this possible. The final question is there anyone, and by anyone I mean a celebrity, a dignitary, any notable person that you were dying to meet and you ended up meeting them in person while you were out filming, whether it was filming and documenting any kind of event, whether it was a demonstration, whether you were at a party, were there any musicians or singers or actors that you stumbled upon in this work that just kind of blew your mind, or maybe made you think differently about that person? Spill the tea, let us know.
Well, I'll start that one off. There were quite a few. This man is obsessed with someone named El Prodigio, the greatest Dominican accordionist that ever lived. So we had too many stories that we just can't talk about because we saw things we should not have seen. I'll say that much. But no, El Prodigio, Fefita La Grande, Anthony Santos, we actually have interviews that we haven't even released yet, which is insane. And Fefita La Grande did some weird things there. I'm not even going to get into that. I will bow out of here, and I'll let these gentlemen continue with the question.
He ran.
Well, he touched upon one funny story with how El Prodigio is definitely one of, I'm very much a Típico fan, so that to me it was very important to be able to meet him. And that's how we got involved in music. I definitely wanted to kind of document him in New York City, so I made my way and made it visible so that I could try to do that. And he actually made me part of his group whenever he would come to New York, so I was his official, in quotes, official photographer in New York. So that one to me was very important, especially since my grandfather was an accordion player. So to me that was very special. But there are many, like he said. Part of it also when we did the Dominican Film Festival, to be able to meet Manny Perez, who is a Dominican actor, who is probably one of the first male, quote-unquote, Hollywood actors of Dominican descent. So to be able to meet him in person, kind of have a couple of conversations with him, that was very interesting. And even what John said earlier, meeting Jade and Michael, and then seeing the evolution that he's made. Not only did he do the movie he said on Netflix, but he was also Colin Kaepernick in the documentary series that they did, the fictional one. And so to be able to see a lot of different people within the medium that we've been able to follow and see their growth and movement. There's also another young lady there who was an actress and wasn't getting any type of role because she was typecast, and now is doing her own podcast and a whole bunch of different things. So there are a lot of different people that we were able to meet that I've been able to continue following and see their growth, and know that at one point or another we were able to document a bit of their careers. That was pretty cool.
You know, Manny Perez and Jaden, like I said, Jaden used to model with my son, you know, and there was the competition then too, because they do look a lot alike. It's just Jaden is a little bit more trigueño, he's a little bit, my son's a little lighter than him. And to see him and how, he's a humble kid, he's a nice kid, you know, and to see him evolve. And, when I saw my Netflix, I told my kids, I said, look, that's Jaden. They used to model you guys. They're like, wow. And Manny Perez, because that's another guy that, we were covering him, he's blowing up now. He's already blowing up. He wasn't blowing up when we covered him. This was 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that we would go to the film festivals. And like I said, and also they weren't there, but I was able to meet Vin Diesel, who's also Dominican. And, when I did the Latino Film Festival, and John Leguizamo, and the most memorable was, Vin Diesel was a very nice guy. He was like, hey, how you doing? Shook my hands. Really nice. Because he's from Bushwick. He grew up from Brooklyn and Bushwick, and I'm from Bushwick. And I was like, oh, wow, And, but it was Oscar de Leon, Colombian salsero, that, it was funny, I was telling the tech guy who was here earlier, that we sent an email to the manager. The manager said, okay, you can go. We're like, oh, wow, that was like the first big guy that I was doing with the website that he eventually collaborated with them. And we sent an email, like, okay, whatever, and they emailed us back. They're like, yo, you could go to Land Quarters, which was at across the street from the Javits Center. It was right before it was closing. So right before they were closing, it was like, oh wow, they're closing, and then so we go, and he was supposed to get there at 7. He didn't get there at 7 because he was in Florida. He was doing a concert in Florida, dancing in with his band and singing, because the guy's an old guy, but he has a lot of energy. So it was 9 o'clock, he wasn't there. Around 10:30, we get a call. Oh, the bus picked him up in the airport. He finally gets to Latin Quarters, and we can't go in without them because we're not on the list from the club. We're on the list, his list, from his manager and promoter. And when he gets out the bus, I'm like this with my camera, and I'm like, yo, record him coming off the bus. And I said, oh, how you doing, Mr. De Leon? I'm John, I'm from Salsa Merengue, and we come here to cover you. The guy just came and gave me a bear hug. Yeah, how you doing? And he shook me, and I just froze. I just froze. It was like the first time, because I don't get starstruck. I've had people done stuff with them that they see a star and they go bananas. It's like, yeah, that's just a person who acts on TV. You know, that was my attitude. I've always been like that. So any musician, I treated them like it was like anybody here. But when he came and he just grabbed me, because I wasn't like, yeah, he just grabbed me and like interviewed him. So we got an interview with Oscar de Leon, but that was the only time that I could say that it was like, oh, that it was, I was speechless. And that's hard for me.
Thank you to all three of you for those stories and letting us into the lives that you live and the work, you know, with this work that you do. And for me personally, it was good to hear that the people that you have met are actually really cool in person and welcoming and loving. So thank you so much. Thank you, Emmanuel Espinal. Thank you, John Carrero. And thank you, Nelson Santana, for talking to us about Antobam, talking to us about what's most passionate to all of you. And much respect to the whole team and the work that you've been able to do consistently. Making sure that you hold control over the image of Dominicans. So thank you so much, Nelson. As our curator, would you like to say something?
Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you to Emma for, organizing and being a part of this project. It's been a pleasure working with you, and thank you all for being here.